Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so glad you're here for the next part of really just looking at that vocational planning for all. As mentioned, my name is Angela Mahoney, and I've been a special educator for over 18 years now. I currently work in Danbury and really enjoy working on the focus of life skill and transition planning for really all ages. Back in 2001, this is where it all began. I was a teacher in a work skills center. It was really my first opportunity to have my own classroom. I knew I was super excited to really set it all up. And I remember being assigned the job. They were like, okay, you're going to be our work skills teacher. And I was like, yay. What does that mean? So ultimately, I learned slowly through just a few years of experience that really I wanted to help the middle and high school students I was supporting really create a plan and prepare for successful employment. So this is really where it all began for me, where I began to see and really think about where are individuals going for employment after high school, and how can we really better prepare them for that employment to be successful. So before I get a little ahead of myself, I'd love to hear with just who's in the audience tonight. It's always neat to see who is following sort of that vocational planning process and who is helping others also find their spark for employment.
All right, it looks like we have a lot of OTs in the audience, about 82, 83% identifying as OTs. We have 8% identifying as SLPs and another 8% identifying as teachers.
Great. Well, I'm glad to have definitely the mix of everyone here. I think it really does continually show that it takes a village to really help prepare individuals for that employment, right? It takes communication, it takes education, it takes fine motor, it takes the community. So it really does take, parent involvement, a variety of people really working together, as I've been trying to help many do, just to build those action steps for really creating that highly engaged transition plan, right? We really want to look at tonight different ways to develop hands-on opportunities related to a variety of employment opportunities, right? And also focusing on data collection and reflection to really build that foundation. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to reference I Can Work, which is a career readiness curriculum. It was designed out of that classroom I showed you earlier. That from that came this concept of really looking at 5-module focus and helping many individuals prepare with job readiness, clerical, retail, food service, and grocery skills. So although I'll be referencing this as a curriculum that I utilized, I want you to take away from tonight also just a variety of ideas and ways you can take these vocational concepts that we're going to look at and break down and really apply them in your own classroom or environment outside of just I Can Work. It can be really with any curriculum you're using in addition to I Can Work. So tonight's focus will be on Module 1, which is this job readiness concept, as well as really looking at Module 3, retail skills for our hands-on. I really like to look at both the job readiness paired with whatever hands-on module we're talking about for the webinar, because I think consistently they go hand in hand. So for that entire time that you're working on the retail or what other hands-on skills we're focusing on, you're going to continue to embed those job readiness conversations and skills as well. So again, it will be a little bit of a review of those job readiness skills, setting up that work environment for success, and then really looking at retail hands-on opportunities. At any time throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask any questions. Just type it in, let me know, and we'll be sure to stop what we're talking about and kind of just have that Q&A. So at any time, if something resonates or seems to, you have a question about, don't be shy. Before I get a little further, I'd love to ask another question just of everyone here. Who and what age group are you currently working with? Where are you focusing your vocational planning on and with what age range?
So it looks like a good majority of our audience is working with high school, about 62% or so saying high school, and the 27% or so saying middle school, and about 13% saying elementary.
Great. Again, I think it's so important to show that there is this range and that at any age, as you'll see as we move throughout the evening, that you really can take components of vocational planning, community awareness, soft skills of communication, and then those hard skills, and really start at a young age and create a whole learner throughout their growth and learning and process of evolving. So it's neat to see that there is this range. I do feel those that are from that high school age group right now will find probably that a lot pertains to those years, but I do think it's important for those that are supporting elementary to see what takeaways or what are some foundational pieces that you could start at the younger years. And again, any feedback or suggestions, I welcome them, so please, anytime. With that said, I really want to take this visual and really kind of break down and have it show, because I really liked how this showed the average learning retention rate and what it entails. What do we need to stimulate and involve in order for those skills to actually be retained, right? Because again, our whole goal with what we're introducing and teaching is to have a vocational desire stick so that that retention of that feeling, those skills, and those processes will then carry over and generalize into the workforce. So again, and no surprise, lecture is the smallest. Most people don't want to sit and listen and just take notes and things in that sense. So it's a smaller retention rate. There's reading involved. Again, we're talking in some of our lessons tonight, there are going to be pieces that are read, and that's one component, but really I want to show you tonight some nice ways that you can add in audio visual. That's a nice 20%, and I think that's probably even grown now. I know in my own classroom, I'm always using videos to either reinforce, pre-teach, wrap it up, or just really show a different way to try whatever it is we're learning about for that day. It really seems to grab the attention of the students I'm supporting. Demonstration as well as discussions as a group, 30 to 50%. We're going to look tonight at modeling how to do the task, role playing, working on communication skills, really talking about what do we know about this job or what do we want to know. Those demonstration and group discussion times are critical for really, again, reinforcing and retaining what we're trying to increase and evolve with as a foundation for vocation success. Again, there's the big one, the practice by doing. That is going to be really what you'll see tonight and in all of the modules. Practice by doing the hands-on task, not just once. We're going to revisit it. It's going to come back around twice in a year and then the following year. Have those skills through data collection, continue to be tracked, and then show the progression. And then ultimately teaching others at 90%. So again, this visual is a nice way to show really all the different components we're going to look at tonight in the area of vocational planning related to job readiness and then retail skills. In your handouts, you're going to receive an overview of 12 months to really show if you're focused 30 to 45 minutes twice a week, and those are just recommended time frames. It could easily be 30 minutes a few times a week, up to an hour. It all depends on your schedule, the student's schedule, as well as how long they can be successful at that task for a long time. So here you can see month 1 looking at job readiness, month 2 some clerical, and then month 3 retail, moving forward into the other areas and then coming back around. So I really wanted to just give everybody a nice overview of what tasks and in what areas could really be done successfully in a 12-month time frame. And then with that, I wanted to give you a resource of really just breaking down month 3 and what would that look like if we did the 2 days a week, really again, visually looking at what tasks are we going to try and what skills are we focusing on before getting into the hands-on tasks themselves. I found this to be really a powerful quote, and although it says teachers, I hope everyone realizes this to me could be really, this is what humans do, right? This is not a teacher thing, or it is, but it's everybody is an educator, right? Especially if we're trying to influence the younger generation for a greater future. We really are all doing this daily, and it says, this is what teachers do. We have brief, temporary encounters with hundreds of kids a year, and yet those brief moments have permanent, lasting impacts. You may be a small part of a kid's story, but the role that you play in it is huge. So although we may have these moments or a number of individuals that we're servicing, seeing, supporting, guiding, the work you are doing, I hope you know, is just critical and so important and truly is helping so many prepare for success. And how great is that? So this is a little kind of review for those that have joined the other webinars, but I wanted to just quickly review. This is sort of that classroom preparation or that foundation work that we as facilitators should really have set before implementing really these hands-on tasks and these lessons, because this will only allow routine, structure, as well as consistency to help then introduce sort of these tasks and these ideas vocationally that are new to many students, these conversations and this vocabulary that is also new. So it's nice to have these systems in place. So when you're looking at the setting up retail tasks, it's nice to kind of, I know I used to just reach out to my colleagues or to my families or different people and just say, if you're cleaning out your closets, I could use some button-down shirts, I can use shoes, shoe boxes, some towels, t-shirts, hangers, you know, and really just kind of got an idea of, okay, what tasks and materials do I need? And then a lot of the things with retail you can collect as donations. So it's a really nice module if you aren't quite ready to invest a lot of money into your vocational planning process or into your classroom in this area. Start with retail because a lot of it can be donated just by people in your community. So after you've kind of collected those supplies, I recommend taking your space if you're working with a group of 6 to 10 students at one time and really kind of opening up the work area, especially when we get into stations and different work materials like hanging up shirts, and you kind of need room for the shoes and the boxes. So it's a nice way just to kind of spread out the desks. They don't have to be in line and give that student work area space nice room. So after you have set up that work area, you really want to create a workspace that talks really just about the expectations every time when you come to work. So you want to have whatever those work expectations are just laid out, whether you have rules for your room, rules for the systems, anything that you think is important to note in that space, and also kind of prepare the individual that, okay, I'm really getting ready to kind of get into work mode, which is different from schoolwork mode, right? That's kind of what we're working on establishing. Okay, now it's work time, and whatever that's going to look like, I have to kind of represent myself in a more professional way. Again, in that area, taking whatever vocabulary you're focusing on, whether it's retail, clerical, if you're working on food service things, take those vocabulary words and have them in that space so that there's that exposure, and consistently when the students come to that workspace, they can see those words. Also in this space, keep the student portfolios. We're going to talk more about those in a bit, but that is a space and a place where students will go each time they're in that room working, and they will access many things like their time card and their reflection and data in that space. So it's a great place to keep those components. It's also important when you're setting up those foundational pieces in your classroom to have a space with time cards and really encourage the use of time cards. You can see here, there's a time card poster, which is just a visual that shows here's where your name goes, here's where the date goes, here's where you fill in the time, the day. There's also a clock for an easy reference. So again, it was just a nice routine way to reinforce the skill of first, last name, time recognition, but also setting the tone that now you are, as a student, preparing to work. Again, here's an example taken from the I Can Work program of just a retail word vocabulary poster. These are materials that they're going to be using and exposed to as students. So it's just a simple way to pair the word with the visual and just have it posted and easily accessible. Some nice ways to really encourage new vocabulary words is through word walls. You can take whatever module or whatever materials you're working with, create those word walls so that when you are doing the lessons or you're talking about the items or you're working on them as a group, you can easily reference them, have students grab them, use them to write and respond when they've done jobs from, and really engage in all the different words and vocabulary that maybe they've never been exposed to before. So now I want to show you just a quick little video related to some different ideas that you can use when introducing vocabulary and really trying to do some different planning ideas. Hello and welcome to I Can Work by Therapro. I'm Angela Mahoney, author of I Can Work. Today's topic is all about vocationally related vocabulary. I want to show you a few ways you can reinforce those important vocabulary words taught in each of the modules. Each module found in the I Can Work program comes with a word wall. These word walls have 8 to 10 words, all related to lessons and activities worked on throughout the module. This is an example of Module 1 job readiness words. These words are examples of words found in a variety of workplaces, such as signing in and out, supervisor, and coworker. These are words that are new to many individuals and need to be reinforced over time. One unique way you can reinforce these words is to create a memory game. By taking the word wall and copying it twice, you can then take the images and place them onto cards like these. Make multiple copies of the cards and place them face down. Partner up students or work one-on-one with an individual if it's a time to take some data collection and see if they can reinforce and read the words that they find. Have each student flip over two, have them look at the pictures, really describe what they see, practice reading the word, think about where they would see that word, and if it's a match, they keep the pair, and if not, they continue going. Again, this is a really neat way to create hands-on learning, turn-taking skills, as well as practice opportunities for seeing and observing, as well as saying all of these vocationally related vocabulary words. By seeing and saying these words, it creates a greater foundation for success, as well as alleviates some anxiety related to work practice. When the students go off campus, now they've had an opportunity to read, see, and understand words such as coworker, supervisor, time card, as well as the concepts of signing in and out. Another way you can practice vocabulary words is to take, again, the word wall with the images, place the images on different envelopes. Then create a stack of more of those images and place them into a task box. In this bin, you will then have different envelopes and images where students will come and match the envelopes with the images. This reinforces understanding of the word, seeing it, as well as one-to-one correspondence. Task boxes also really help build those workplace skills such as work readiness, independence, as well as asking for help or more work materials. If you're working with individuals who do not need the picture-supported version, you can then create text versions. Take the same text words, you can create cards to do memory, have the students practice using them in a sentence, writing about where they see those words, talk about where would these words be used and in what ways. Really build the discussion while playing the engaging game and take that learning further. Additionally, you can put the words onto envelopes and create a task box that also is just text related for individuals to practice recognizing and reading the different words. So as you can see, these are just a few examples of ways you can reinforce the range of vocabulary words that you are teaching and introducing in a variety of modules throughout the program. Remember that every little bit counts on the path to successful employment. Please be sure to follow me on Facebook at I Can Work Therapro, and you will have weekly updates related to all the different tasks that are done in different classrooms around the world. Thank you for all you do. So as you can see, again, my hope tonight and for, those of you that are here and people watching is really just to inspire different ways to encourage learning for all, right? Hands-on, different ways to, really get that going. And so again, the example of the memory game, also you can do a fun little bingo game that you can take all the vocabulary words that you're focused on and introducing and just keep the learning fun. Another step in this initial process is create that space where there's a whiteboard and you can note what is the focus. Really list those students' I can statements. I can hang shirts. I can match socks. I can pair shoes. I can reflect on my work, right? We really want this to be a place where they're seeing all the I can statements related to the vocational work that they're going to focus on with you during that time. And then the last component that I really found to be a fun component, but also important, recognizing the hard work. Take that time to create an award or some way to tell one student once a month in each group, or maybe you pick one a week. It can depend on what works for you, but really point out you are professional of the month. Congratulations. This is why it could be you signed in every day, you used the time clock, you completed all of your work on time, you were professional, whatever you want to point out with those work expectations, but taking the time to recognize that and maybe even creating a space where you're highlighting your professional of the month winners, almost like an employee of the month board. It's such a fun way to mimic the real world, right, where there are employee of the month boards, but also engage and reinforce the positive choices people are making, these individuals on their path, right, to learning about different jobs and what they like and in what ways. As we've talked kind of throughout all of this, there's this balance of hard and soft skills, really when we're learning anything, especially when trying to learn it as a whole learner. So I think it's important to recognize that, yes, some of what I'm talking about tonight is going to be more related to those hard skills, right, of being able to do the task that is necessary for success. It's something that we can see through evidence. We're going to be able to have data, work completion, things like that. But there are still these soft skill components, right? Things that are not necessarily easy to see or quantifiable, but are something that we see in a work style or an approach. Again, communication, leadership, teamwork. So it's important to remember that both the hard and the soft skills are really critical when we're looking at helping individuals build those skills for that whole learner. So one way to really track what is being introduced and skills that are important over time is by having a way for individuals to really note the job that was completed as well as what they thought about the job. So there's different ways to do this. This is one example of just a basic form. It's a fill-in that students go to, and they basically can just write on their own what they thought. You can also take that same format where you have the date and the job, and a student can now, with support or not, point, circle, or bingo mark what their reflection is, what they thought of the job. It is really, really important to take that time to allow for reflection. It's not just let's do all these hands-on tasks and let's learn all about these jobs in the community and how to communicate with our coworkers, but not really take the time to say, did you like what we did for our task today? What did you think about retail? Was it so-so? Did you like your job? Was it tricky? So really allotting time for all individuals through writing, pointing, circling, or selecting to have an opportunity to reflect on each job they've tried each time. Again, creating ways for all learners to have accessibility is really what pushes me daily, especially in the area of vocational planning. I am constantly and frequently really trying to evolve with the ways that I am creating really alternative, augmentative-based ways for learners also to access this curriculum. So one thing I wanted you to see tonight was also that not only can you do the handwritten, fill in what I thought and do it, through text, you can also present it where there's a picture supported version and there could be pointing, or you can take it to another level where you take those responses, you laminate them, put them with Velcro, and you can now create a field of 2 to 4 to 5 for individuals to have really, again, that engagement of what did you think of the job today? You show me, you pick, because that meaningful engagement is really, again, what creates that memory, that motor memory and that emotional memory, and hopefully will spark a place of enjoyment for employment in the future. So before I get further, I'd love to ask another question of everyone out there to see, do you really find it challenging to find pre-vocational materials that are really like differentiated, kind of looking at those different levels we were just talking about, what is out there?
So it looks like about 70% of our audience is saying yes, they're having a hard time finding those materials, and 38 or so percent are saying somewhat.
You know, and again, that makes sense in the sense of what I've experienced or noticed, especially related to my 18 years of experience of really trying to differentiate a multitude of lessons to create sort of, again, that accessibility. So I've really recently especially started to really say, like, you know, what is this differentiation? You know we have to know the learner. And we definitely want to take the time to assess the learner, because through that is where we will then adjust our assignments, right? We're constantly questioning, is what we're doing working? Is it enough? Is it best for that individual? And always trying to look at our curriculum approaches. So I think through this idea of what is out there right now, I'm hoping tonight you'll see, okay, I found this worksheet, or I have this worksheet, but here's a way I can differentiate it even further, or give it a little bit more spunk, or create it in a way that many individuals in one group can access and understand what we're talking about. So again, an example of a critical soft skill, you know, communicating and saying hello or greeting coworkers at work. This is something that I think is so important to work on when preparing for employment. And this is an example of one lesson that would be a text version for someone that is a reader, but then additionally adding in the visual component. So here's our question, but we have the visual for shake hands, the visual for waving, the visual for a high five, right? So you're taking that same lesson, but now we have, for those that need visual supports, the visuals embedded. Additionally, you could take this, laminate those visuals, and maybe do a match, or put the field of two in front of the student and say, which way would you greet a friend? And have them pick the hand, you know, the handshake or the high five or the wave. Really, again, engaging in the learning that way, or they're matching, or they're placing their answer in the correct spot, so that all three levels are engaged in the same topic about greeting, right? Coworkers or friends in a work environment, but it's differentiated for those different learners. Here's a nice example of some friends practicing. I love the role playing. I think that hands-on role playing practice is, again, a nice way. Yes, it's a little awkward. I know it's a little uncomfortable, but it really does help tie in those skills. Another component that I wanted to really build on was communication for students that I had found were really requiring, or more of my augmentative communication users. So I really wanted to start to create almost like work boards, so that this paired with the vocabulary could be right at their work area, and they could point to, I need more, and tell me, I need more, you know, labels, I need more paper, I need help. And I had found, just by creating these little squares, right? I took my vocab words, I just cut and glued these little visuals above them and below, and placed them at their work area, and really had greater engagement and greater success with seeing the growth of those individuals almost advocate for themselves, as well as recognize when they needed more work. Because as we know, part of building this work readiness is teaching individuals that when you run out of work, you're not just going to sit and hang out, right? You need to actually either get more work, say you need more, or what is next. So teaching that skill can also start at those early years. And through this way, where you have that visual to guide how to make the statement. Here's another great way to build the communication skills: creating coworker partnerships with cards. I need, and then you kind of list out the supplies, or you have the, how many do you need? Again, even just those little cue cards help individuals that may not quite have those skills yet have the support, right, through that differentiation to really grow in this area of not only working with a coworker, but communication. Additionally, taking any worksheet you have, whether it's in a text version, picture supported or not, you can even then take those pictures, cut them up, and create a worksheet where now it's a little more cut and paste. Or again, it allows you to create a field of 2 to 3 options that individuals can choose the correct answer. I had found, when I was using a lot of my picture supported materials, that certain users or students were circling everything. So although it was supported or differentiated for their reading level, it wasn't really engaging or getting through in the way that I had envisioned. But I had then found when I took the same visuals and the same question, but eliminated how many visuals at a time are being presented, again, something you can do with any worksheet you have currently, I found greater engagement and greater success, as well as more meaningful responses. So this is something I highly recommend doing with a lot of the materials you may already have related to vocational concepts. Additionally, taking that same idea where I have a worksheet, I have my text version and my picture supported, but I really needed something a little more manipulative based. So I had taken the laminator, I laminated all the sheets, I put Velcro on the back, and I basically made a worksheet where all the answer choices were Velcro based, and those choices could be answered with each one with the pictures. So I had 3 different level learners in one lesson learning about a cashier, but everybody was engaging on the same concepts of what tools and equipment do they work with? You know, can you circle one? Can you circle one? Can you write one in? Can you point to one? It was everybody sharing, everybody, you know, finding a tool or an equipment, or what do they work with? Who do they work with? So it was a really nice thing to see. Additionally, when building that sort of job readiness focus and embedding these activities in with all the hands-on, you want to continue to practice the job application process. And this can look different for everyone. There can be the paper version. Here's my friend enjoying his job application. Very proud of his work, but you can also practice online. I included in the handout different links to online websites for different practice. It's a great way just to even encourage students knowing their first and last name, their address, their birthday, some of those skills that are really important to find out and practice typing in and knowing. So again, just some examples of different online references for ways that students can practice. And now I want to talk definitely more about what do we do with this retail work, right? The hands-on learning time, because we all know everybody that we're supporting is not disabled, they're truly able, right? Our hope is to show and strengthen what their strengths are for the rest of the world. Again, through this is creating 2 different ways or even more for access. And also, I recommended this in the beginning, really taking the time to do that video modeling. You'll see as we get into our hands-on lessons and the lesson plans that I have for you, each one starts with a warm-up, and I recommended a nice retail video, different each time, just to kind of tie into what the task is. But these videos are just a great way to really target desired behavior, use self-modeling. They really show that they're engaging, and also it's observational learning. And it's a great way to engage that group and get them ready for what you're going to then do next. Additionally, taking the time to talk either with one-on-one or whole group, but really looking at different jobs related to that module. So we'll be talking about retail tonight, and really saying, what do I know about being a cashier? What do I want to know about being a cashier? What did I learn about it? Or as a group, another way to differentiate it, not one-on-one, but whole group create this chart and say, what do we know about working in a shoe store? What do we want to know? And then afterwards, what did we learn? So again, you can do these whole group, you can do them one-on-one, you can do them weekly, monthly, but taking that time for that group discussion where a lot of that learning happens, and that's where the retention comes from. You're really retaining all these KWL concepts for future application. So let's now get into that month 3, week 1, where we're really looking at retail concepts of hands-on activities. So again, you'll see for day 1, the video for just the job related to retail sales, and then also there's one for day 2. After doing that 5-minute warm-up, again, do that KWL. What do we know, either individually or as a group, and what do we want to know about working in a retail store? Then you're going to practice buttoning shirts, and then conclude with reflecting in portfolios. So when setting up a work area to work with any of the tasks, I recommend having it go left to right with the visual of what's acceptable and unacceptable work in the middle, so the individual can always reference that. So this is just an example of what a work area layout would look like. And then again, you can take your own pictures, and you really just want to put a picture of a shirt that's buttoned correctly in one, and then one that's messy and off and not correct. It's really much better if you can use your own materials in your classroom for these pictures and kind of adhere them. But anyway, a visual of just showing this is our goal of what would look nice or what would be acceptable, and this is what would not be acceptable in a workforce. Then your second week, you have your 2 different videos to warm up, again, 5 to 10 minutes. Now we're looking at that KWL and talking about working in a clothing store. So in the beginning, it was a different environment. Now you're looking a little more specifically. What do we know or want to know about working in that store? And then we'll talk the next day about what did we learn. Additionally, then you're going to practice the hands-on skills, have students try boxing shoes, and then always taking that time to reflect. Now, again, a lot of these tasks, when broken down, seem small, but when you then take boxing shoes correctly, buttoning and hanging shirts, sizing things, and apply them to an environment such as a TJ Maxx, a Home Goods, or places like that, you can then see there really is a connection with having the exposure to these tasks and these expectations for then greater success for those first off-campus job experiences. So here's another visual layout. It shows how you would have the shoes to the left. You're going to have your visual guide in the center. You definitely want to have what's acceptable and unacceptable visually in front. And then your finished products go to the right. Take that time to show, again, with a photo, any way you like, what is the expectation? What would it look like a correctly paired and boxed shoes? And what would be incorrectly paired? I also really think at times when we're looking at differentiation, we forget to take the time to maybe think visually we can be differentiating it. Maybe it's something that's tricky for that student to understand. How do the shoes even get laid up, set up? What do you mean, like, toe to heel and things like that? So this is just an example of a simple visual that could be in the middle of a workplace, and it helps the student place the shoes first correctly and then put them into the shoebox. And this is even something that if they were successful with could go off campus for those first few bits or times at work and help them successfully then box and pair shoes at work. And eventually you could take away, fade out that visual. Again, here are just some picture examples. The shirt is not buttoned correctly, then it is. The shoes are incorrect, and then they're not, and then hanging on the shirt the correct way. So let's see. So now I want to get into the next component. Again, looking at just what would this twice a week, 30 to 45 minutes look like. We're focusing on retail now. We're in month 3, week 3. Again, our warm-up videos. I really wanted everybody to have just a nice reference. These lessons are just suggestions, but I wanted to really show you, without having to do too much of the legwork, what I've used in my own classroom successfully. So I love both of these videos. I think they're very concrete, easy to understand, not too long, but really tie into that retail concept. Again, taking that time to do the KWL, these are great data samples, great data points of what's been discussed, what's been reviewed, and even what has been learned. I think students many times are surprised by what they either thought they knew, but additionally what they learned. Then we're going to practice folding towels and then reflecting in portfolios. Again, another setup where you'll see that there are towels to the side where they're unfolded. I have my acceptable and unacceptable layout with my visual. Also a folding board so that students that need that help have a framework for how wide to fold the towel. And then to your right, the finished product of the folded towels. Again, I think it is just so important to give a reference of what is considered acceptable and unacceptable. I think when working, it's nice to know, okay, this is what's expected of me, and this wouldn't work. It's also nice to have these visuals when it comes to the reflection portfolio time, because when you're checking the completed work with the student, you can hold it and say, does this look like the acceptable or the unacceptable? And when there's that opportunity to pause and see it visually, more often than not, they're going to recognize, I think I need to fix it, or no, that looks acceptable. So it's a nice way to also see that reflection. One thing I included also in the handouts was how to create the towel folding board. I wanted to make sure everybody had this as a resource because it's a really helpful tool to have when teaching and introducing to students how to fold, especially the larger towels. So I wanted to make sure everybody saw, and it's nothing remarkably like fancy or tricky, but again, as many resources I can give you all who are really doing the important work, all that I can give you, I want you to have, and what I have tried over the years, I want you to also try and be successful with. So this is just another little tool that you can have where you may use it or not, and it's something you would want to fade out, but it's basically a large rectangular shape that's made to place in the middle of the towel that then you can pull out when folding, and it really helps create that framework for a nice fold. So now let's also continue to look at what else are we doing with retail tasks in this month. So now we're in week 4. We've done our buttoning of shirts. We practiced pairing and boxing shoes. We folded towels. I have the 2-minute warm-ups. So it's a nice routine. Now students again are knowing, okay, when I come into work, I know where my time cards are. I know I've signed in. We're most likely going to do a little warm-up, and then we're going to actually do some hands-on practice, and I'm going to reflect. They're really getting into that work routine, and it becomes richer with that routine, I think, the output that's there. And what's important to remember is that it's 30 to 45 minutes twice a week. It does not need to be long. It doesn't need to be 50 button-down shirts or 10, 25 towels. It can be smaller amounts so that it isn't overwhelming or so boring that they'll never want to do it again, but it's enough just to see, would you want to work in an environment where you were doing this more? Is this something that you enjoyed? So during this week, I really want to bring back in that job opportunity or that job application practice time. That's those job readiness skills. So we're not going to do a KWL this week. We've done a few of them throughout retail. Now let's either do a paper or online job application practice this week. Also practice hanging shirts on hangers, and then continue to reflect in the portfolios. Again, I have that work area laid out where I would have the shirts and hangers to the left, all the materials unassembled. I have what's an acceptable way to hang a shirt and unacceptable as a visual. And then shirts can either be neatly on the table with the hangers, or if you get a clothing rack, you can hang them on the rack. So now I want to show you a video, just a quick little one of a station set up in a classroom where a student used these materials to practice hanging shirts related to the retail. So as you can see, he was able to really just take all those multi-steps, but he really learned that routine. And what was nice to see is that you can, again, create different ways for students to really just practice reading the size on the shirt, placing the hanger in, and then even if you want to take it further, take that size card and place it on the hanger. Similar again to when they go to an environment such as TJ Maxx and they have those little size rings that go on and off of the hangers. That is a task that is something that is asked to be done in that environment. So let's practice or preview that skill in the classroom sooner to kind of create that opportunity for success. Additionally, I love to really look at what are those 10 industry, areas where we really need these skills. And you can see restaurants, retail, food and beverage, health and wellness. These are all important areas. So the more work we can do related to building these skills and to help those soft skills be strong, I do think the greater work we're doing. So here you can also see an example of a life skills station. So I basically took all the skills that we've been working on, and I really wanted to challenge this student. So I'd said, sign in on the time card, locate the size of the shirt, hang it in the correct section, Then you're going to watch the video on your own and sign out on your time card. So this was a student that had known the routine, had done the years of work, had been successful, and really was able to follow a multi-step challenge in the area of retail work. Continuing with retail, some other suggestions are taking shirts that are in a bin, putting different bins out with the size cards on them, and they have to find the shirt, look at the size, and then sort it in the correct bin. So they say, okay, it's a medium, it goes in the medium bin. It's a small, it goes over here. Again, taking the time just to look at the clothes, find what size they are, understand that those are different sizes, and then sort them according. So another great job in the area of retail is pairing socks, so matching and pairing them. So this is another example of how, again, you have your work area set up. It's very routine. I would always have it where my acceptable and unacceptable visuals are in the middle, all the work that needs to be sorted to the left, and then they're going to complete it and put the finished product to the right. Here's an example of a little setup in my room. Again, your visuals can match either something you can find online if it's easier, or your own with the materials you have in your space. Here again, another challenge I wanted to give this student, and again, direct application. It's so important that it doesn't just look and appear and feel like busy work. I always want my students and any individual to feel like the work they're doing is purposeful and meaningful, and that it ties into things beyond the classroom. So here's an example of, yes, you're going to be pairing and matching these socks, but you're going to actually be doing in our bedroom station, and you're going to place them into the dresser where socks would typically go. So there was this whole tie-in and understanding as to what the task was for and how it made sense. Again, another really great task to practice in the area of retail, as I've seen it for over the years of students going off into off-campus jobs or first-time employment, are sizing shoes, placing shoe size labels into the shoes that are for sale. So taking those little labels and placing the size 8 on the inside of the size 8 shoe, or placing the 7.5 in the 7.5. So what I did was take that opportunity. I created a job where you could have your correctly sorted and sized shoes visuals in one, and then show one that was a size 8, but they put a size 5 sticker, so there's an understanding of unacceptable or incorrect. But then making these little size labels and having the shoes just have Velcro on the inside, and that way the students could practice finding the size, putting the little label on the inside, and seeing if it was correct. One thing I also found really helpful when introducing and working on the concept of acceptable, unacceptable work was, for certain students, it really helped to have an X or a check. So that if they weren't able to recognize, we would use just those visuals paired with what was the work acceptable, unacceptable poster board, and we would say, is this an X or a check? And they were able to take those manipulative pieces and place them on each pair of shoes they did to see if it was correct or incorrect. Another nice way to really just have the student be a part of the process of reflection, as well as track how many they did correctly and incorrectly, and really learn to grow from mistakes they're making. Again, just a basic check and an X, but it really holds the student accountable, but also engages them in the learning process of what was right and wrong and why. As I've said, it's just more than just a job or learning a skill. It really is the exposure and practice that will really truly lead to greater confidence and independence. Lastly, a component that I really think helps tie in all of these skills that you're modeling, pre-teaching, and practicing are things like task boxes. These are these great little compartments that contain materials for certain activities, and they're really just short and sweet. You know, they're step by step, they have all of the visuals, they're clearly labeled, and you have everything really located in one spot. And you can pretty much make a task box for any of the hands-on activities that we've talked about tonight. I'm going to now have you check out a video about how to create a task box with the task of pairing and sizing shoes. All right, task box time again. Today's task box is going to be one of my favorites. It's actually from the I Can Work program, the retail module, and it's the one using the sizing of shoes. So again, on the lid, we have the different steps. It shows the visuals, the shoes, the sizing, and what's acceptable and not. So when the students come to the bin, they know exactly what's expected of them, as well as what the task is. Inside the bin, it has the 2 visuals that come from the program. Again, just showing the students what is expected in the task, as well as the right way and the wrong way to do it, as well as a folder with all the different sizes. So the students would take the shoes, pair them, find the size in the shoe, and then take that number off the folder and place it to match inside. This task came from watching students of mine in the past work at jobs such as TJ Maxx or different places that were retail based, and they had to pair, size, as well as put away the shoes on the shelf. So this kind of skill in a task box really just helps build that foundation for success and helps individuals plan for their future. So as you can see, it was just a little example of a way to take sort of that one task we were talking about, put it in the bin, and have that different practice opportunity. Noted as we did with all the other tasks, it's really important that when you are doing your task box to take that data. Make sure you really include the number successfully completed, did anything stand out, what were some of those strengths and challenges, as well as anything else, right? Were they able to locate it, do it independently? Because all of this data related to work that you've done together, whole group, or also with modeling, also then compared to work that they've done independently, shows the independent skill has grown, that they've also become really more able to generalize that skill and really show their strength and growth with it, as well as then carry it over into a more generalized setting, which is ultimately the goal. And these are just some ideas quickly, again, trying to help everybody have their resources and their bags of tricks of different task box ideas of things you can do if you do have the I Can Work program. You can really create quite a few already just from the program itself, where you're practicing a few tasks in each of the different areas related to retail, grocery, food service, and clerical. Another idea of ways to really reinforce what you're teaching is creating these stations. I had mentioned the bedroom station in the last little socks pictures. This is one of a laundry station where I was able to really assign different jobs to different students, wash one load of laundry, match and fold the socks, sort out the light and dark. It was a great way to really reinforce the retail skills that we were working on. Button down shirts, hang up the shirts that come out of the dryer. You could also fold the t-shirts, lots of different ways to reinforce those skills. And then lastly, really offering just variety engagement, right? Another fun way to take all of the different module tasks and then create that generalizing and that independence is to create something like a grab a job. Just take all the different jobs either in your classroom, in your building that you've worked on hands-on in the different modules, put them on cards and challenge the students to pick one. Not one they like or one they know, but just pick one and try it and then take that time to really reflect. Again, variety and exposure is the best way to then, through reflection, understand what are areas you've enjoyed, what has resonated, and then what are tasks or areas you haven't enjoyed. Let's revisit those, but then that'll also be good for us to know when helping you plan for your future. So my last poll question for the night is really just to understand how everyone's feeling tonight. Do you feel like with this information, your pre-vocational toolbox has grown? Do you have some more ideas to really help individuals find, their spark for successful employment?
All right, it looks like a good amount of our audience is saying yes, with about 85% and about 15% saying somewhat.
That's wonderful. I'm really glad that the majority of you feel like there were definitely some great ideas tonight that you can maybe take back to the great work you're doing and really, apply some of these skills to some of those, components and really just kind of, again, differentiate for all to really have that opportunity for learning. One last piece I wanted to make sure I share is that there's one more webinar coming up. I'm going to really break down some food service and grocery, vocational tasks, again, continuing to look at some great YouTube pieces I found, some lesson planning, some different ideas of ways to differentiate, as well as keep so many learners engaged on this journey to successful employment. I also have the 3 webinars that are archived right on the Therapro website, so that if you missed any of the related to really looking at job readiness, the overview of paving the path, as well as clerical, you can check them out there. And then lastly, just be sure to follow me because I'm really growing and learning on this journey every day. I hear from new educators, new therapists, new classrooms, people that are trying different things, and I'm always sharing their ideas as well as always coming up with new ideas and new ways to really, again, help all be a part of their journey to successful employment. So be sure to follow me on Facebook and check me out on LinkedIn.